In 1972, the great American chess player Bobby Fischer became an instant folk hero and chess superstar by winning the World Championship. 2 decades later, another hero, world champion Garry Kasparov, would successfully defend his title against Englishman Nigel Short and prove once again that he was the best chess fighter in the world. Now in 1995, the World Trade Center in New York finds Kasparov doing battle once more, his title under assault from a new challenger, the young and dangerous Viswanathan Anand from India. 2 mighty giants have come to decide who will be king. Intel presents the 1995 World Chess Championship. Welcome to the 1995 Intel World Chess Championship on the 107th floor of the World Trade Center, where world champion Garry Kasparov is defending his title against challenger Viswanathan Anand. I'm Maurice and with me is Grandmaster Danny King. Danny, after a week of play, the score is deadlocked at 2-2.
Kasparov has started this match so cautiously, and I think we're yet to see him at his best. So this week, I'm hoping he's going to come out with a really big punch.
Well, playing in his first World Championship is Vishy Anand at age 25. And Danny, this guy has nerves of steel.
He's played himself into this match so well, and that's not easy against an opponent as intimidating as Garry Kasparov.
Well, last week the players had 4 consecutive draws.
It was real cat and mouse stuff, but now they've played themselves in, I'm sure they're going to go for it.
Well, after a weekend's rest, Game 5. Anand with the white pieces, Kasparov with the black pieces, and the question of the week, was Anand going to play the same stuff he'd been playing all week?
Well, it turned out that he did. He's opened with his favorite move, pawn to e4.
And Kasparov now studying the position, they're recording his move, and as is known, Kasparov loves to respond with the Sicilian defense, taking a few moments there before making his move, thinking about it, and he did respond with pawn to c5, the vaunted Sicilian defense.
That's right, Kasparov has had so much success playing the Sicilian. It's a great counter-attacking opening, so he's looking to land a big punch as well.
Anand not at all afraid, continuing in the same manner as he had in the past week, bringing his knight out there, Kasparov playing d6, and just wondering what is going to be new for this game was Kasparov.
Now, if we jump a few moves ahead in the game, we'll find that the moves have been repeated exactly from Game 3. So who's going to come up with the first new move?
Anand there considering the position and wondering what an opening specialist like Kasparov could come up with. And here, his bishops are well placed. The knight there attacking the bishop on d3.
So Kasparov has actually played the first new move. He's brought his bishop out and brought the rook into the center behind the black queen.
And Anand whipped out his response, queen to e2, bringing his queen off the back rank and connecting rooks.
Now, the point of Kasparov's rook move is that it gives his queen, when it's just hit there, it gives his queen a square to retreat to. It's just being attacked by the bishop.
Anand playing very quickly and calmly, aggressing the world champion in this game, looking for a win. He had missed a win in Game 3, and he was trying to revenge himself here.
So the queen just retreating there, it was hit by the bishop, and it drops back behind the rook. But look at that, it's the line in the middle of the board. The player's still no contact. They're still not crossing that line. White has these very nice center pawns, but he'd like to open them up to get that bishop working, but at the moment not possible. The knight hitting the bishop on c6.
And now exchanging the bishop was Kasparov, that deadly bishop that could have won the game the last time. Kasparov eager to get rid of it, and now it seemed as if the worst was behind him.
Well, just look at Kasparov there. You can tell he likes this position, that he thinks he's got something, maybe getting some advantage here. And he's broken with that pawn push in the center of the board. That's a great move.
That pawn push, a typical move in the Sicilian defense, opening up lines for his pieces there, the bishop getting ready to get in the battle. And after this move, Kasparov had no worries. Anand now playing his queen up to f3, trying to defend the position.
And that looks quite an insipid move. Black's knight dropping back, hitting the bishop on b6. So it looks like Kasparov in control. An exchange taking place on c6, where this opens up, could open up the line for Black's queen down towards the weak pawn.
And then the black queen leaping into the d6 square, and there Kasparov leaving the room as if to say, what are you going to do about this response? And Anand was feeling the heat.
Well, it's clear that Anand's opening preparation simply hasn't worked out here, and it's Kasparov who's managed to improve his game from week 1.
With all those pawns in the center of the board at Kasparov and his queen leaping into the action on the b4 square, attacking a lot of key points in white's position.
And now Kasparov advancing those center pawns. They could be very powerful indeed. Look at them. They control a lot of squares.
And it seemed as if Anand was just trying to defend, shifting his position back and forth, attacking with pawns and defending that center pawn in the middle of the board. And now Anand bearing down, eager to try to hold this position because he felt that maybe he would lose.
Yeah, he has to be very careful here. But in fact, he did come up with a very nice idea. The knight dropping back, hitting Kasparov's center pawn. And if the pawn advances, then that creates serious weakness. So you can see that the knight just adding to the pressure on the black pawn in the middle of the board.
Kasparov dropping back his bishop, but there was a lot of pressure on that center pawn. And Anand quickly liquidating, exchanging off those pawns in the middle of the board. And it seemed as if the tension now suddenly broke. Black still had the slight edge, though.
Yeah, maybe a slight advantage for black. The queen on b4 standing pretty well. But after these exchanges, Anand relieves the pressure on his position. Kasparov can take a pawn there, he can take the bishop, but after these exchanges, it's looking like a fairly balanced position.
And in fact, the position had liquidated down, and the players stopping for a moment, and after Anand captured the pawn in the middle of the board, without much tension left, Kasparov hovering there and offering a draw to the surprise of the crowd, but in fact, Anand accepted, and the game had ended in a draw.
Well, another draw, but I think Kasparov has got to be pretty pleased with this game because he's neutralized Anand's opening preparation. Anand didn't come up with anything new.
Well, the score after game 5, no wins, and the score was tied at 2.5, 2.5. Welcome back to the 1995 Intel World Chess Championship at the observation deck on the 107th floor of the World Trade Center. And Danny, the crowd came looking for blood today.
Well, I think they're going to get it as well. Both players feeling the pressure. They've played 5 draws, and I think they really wanted to give the crowd something to talk about.
Well, Garry Kasparov with the white pieces, Viswanathan Anand with the black pieces, and Kasparov determined to do something with his white. He's known as a big server, like Pete Sampras with the serve, and he hadn't won a game yet.
And this is a clear indication that he's playing for a win. In his last few games before this match, he's played e4 against Anand and actually beaten him. So he's really going for it today, and he's playing the so-called Spanish opening, the Ruy Lopez opening. Very aggressive indeed.
Clearly, Anand was aware of Kasparov's aggressive intentions for the day, e4 being Bobby Fischer's favorite killer move. And we jump ahead now to move 11, and the game had started to heat up.
This position, very well known to both players. It's a theoretical position. They will have been analyzing this at home with their seconds, with their analysts. Now here, you can see that black pawn in the center has played forward, opening up the line of the bishop. And now this move, an extraordinary move, moving the knight out. It can be taken by the queen. It's a sacrifice. It's been seen before, but then the queen would come out to f3 and all hell would break loose. So Anand prefers to just exchange the pawns there down on c3. There we go, that black pawn. But first, Kasparov exchanging off the bishop with his knight. Anand recaptures.
And now with complex play, mayhem on both sides of the board, Kasparov with a weak pawn, and suddenly Anand's queen leapt to the d3 square, towering on that square, and Kasparov quickly moving his knight out the way.
He's offering an exchange of queens, but Anand's queen move, that's very important indeed. It means that it's very difficult for Kasparov to build up an attack against Anand's king. So looks like a strong move.
And right there, Kasparov moving his queen out of the way, but Danny, not from fear, but because he wanted to attack the king.
Exactly. Look at Anand's king there. The pawns have advanced. That means black's king's a little bit insecure. So by keeping the queens on, Kasparov hopes to maintain attacking chances. Now, the line of the rook opening up there, attacking the pawn, Anand bringing his king up to defend that pawn.
But his king side was porous, looking very weak, and Kasparov started taking aim at that king. Kasparov in his element when he's on the attack.
But, well, it's still not so clear. Anand's queen in the center there is, for the moment, preventing Kasparov building up some kind of attack. So, very double-edged position.
And after that bishop move, looking to exchange off bishops, Kasparov was trying to remove some of the defenders away from the king. And now Kasparov quickly returning to the board, wondering what Anand had cooked up to try to defend against this ferocious attack.
Well, it's such a double-edged position. After this exchange, the pawn coming out, attacking the bishop exchanging, And now Kasparov trying to get in on these weakened squares around black's king, and he's moved the knight in to d4, attacking the pawn on e6 and threatening to bring his queen over, attacking black's king.
And Anand felt it was necessary to remove that dangerous knight by sacrificing his rook in the center of the board.
This is a very good move from Anand. He realized that he was going to go on the defensive, so he gives up a bit of material just to try and keep his king position secure.
And Kasparov quickly glancing at him there, wondering had his attack been beaten back with the vicious defensive move by Anand, and Kasparov spending quite a bit of time in this position. Yes, the weaknesses were there, but how could he penetrate down the open line? And those two pawns were looking to become queens, Danny.
So can Kasparov build up an attack against the king? That's the question. But instead, he's offered to exchange queens. And in this way, he's corrected his pawn structure. His pawn structure has now improved. Look at those 3 pawns in the center of the board. He could try and advance those down the board later. And he also has an open line for his rook.
So now that pawn defended by the king coming into the game, and the position was double-edged. Now Kasparov bringing his king to the center of the board to try and slow up the march of those pawns on the left side. And so the position was extremely sharp, and suddenly a rook burst in on the 7th rank.
Well, this is such a tense position because Anand has a rook and a knight against 2 rooks. Now, normally the 2 rooks are stronger, but here, because Anand has those pawns at the side of the board, always threatening to march down, but Kasparov also has counterplay. He's trying to take pawns, but those black pawns, they're always threatening to march down the board, so Anand has serious counterplay here.
And Anand whipping out his pawn moves, and Kasparov also attacking the knight in the center of the board, and the game had reached its height. Neither side sure what was going on.
Well, this is an amazing decision. Kasparov actually offered a draw. Well, what a surprise. We thought that Kasparov was still going for the win here.
Well, the score was tied at 3-3. We were confused, and so was Anand.
Well, we both basically agreed with each other. We didn't have a clue what was going on. So. Basically.
Well, Vishy and all the other Grandmasters, we took a look at it, and it was complete madness on the board.
It certainly was, and in fact, Kasparov felt that he was possibly winning in the final position and was a bit disgusted with himself for offering a draw.
Later, Anand felt the same thing, that Kasparov had an advantage, and he was somewhat relieved.
Well, when we played the game out, all we ended up getting was a draw as well. There we go, black's pawn very dangerous, but white managing to get some kind of perpetual check against black's king.
Game 7, Anand with the white pieces, Kasparov with the black pieces, and the question was, who was going to come up with a new move of this game?
Well, we've jumped a few moves ahead in the game, and Anand's seconds have been working for the last couple of games to cook up some big improvement. And here it is. He tried to blow open Kasparov's kingside right out of the opener.
A spectacular move, e5, never before seen in this position, and Kasparov studying, wondering what was in store, and he took the pawn in the center of the board.
But, I mean, this is such a dangerous position. One false move from Kasparov, and he could go down. Now you see the pawn attacking the knight. Kasparov captures the pawn on e5. Anand has opened up the line of the bishop. Very dangerous indeed. Kasparov always has to watch out for a sacrifice.
And the knight jumping to the center of the board, and the whole place was abuzz after Anand captured knight takes d5.
Now Kasparov has a choice of how to recapture this knight, knight or pawn. He recaptured with the pawn. That means that he's opened up the line of the bishop. He has a little bit more freedom, but also he can still try and take that bishop.
And now rook to e1 defended his weak pawn, Anand, in the center of the board, and then h6 by Kasparov controlling the g5 square.
Well, h6 was a very clever move indeed. That really prevented any attacking chances that Anand might have had on the king side. A brilliant move from Kasparov.
And Anand looking very frustrated. His initial opening plan not successful at all. So now he had to backtrack and play the move c3, attacking the knight on b4.
Okay, so the knight attacked. Surely Kasparov will take the bishop. There we go. That very dangerous attacking piece, so he's just exchanged it off.
And now the queen capturing back, and there was some pressure on the weak pawn on d5, and the question was, would Kasparov stop to defend that pawn, especially with a lethal bishop on b6 in his position?
So it looked as though Anand was getting some initiative, but Kasparov didn't defend the pawn. He just went to exchange off that bishop instead.
So a dramatic pawn sacrifice. The question was, would Anand take it? And Anand coming back to the board as Kasparov feeling very confident about his last move.
Well, I think Anand was rather surprised by that move. Very good strategy from Kasparov. He's not going to be tied down defending that pawn. He just goes for activity instead.
And the queen capturing the pawn, so temporarily Kasparov was a pawn down and his bishop was under attack by the white queen.
Okay, but obviously Kasparov has seen this far and he found a very good response. Bishop comes out attacking the queen.
The queen under attack at the moment. The queen had to backtrack, but still Anand was up an extra pawn. The question was, would Kasparov be able to get it back?
The queen must retreat. Can't take the bishop. It's covered by the rook, so the queen just dropping back.
And now Kasparov exchanging off that dangerous bishop in his position, and it seemed as if the worst was over, especially with that weak white pawn in an advanced position.
So white temporarily a pawn up, but now Kasparov brings the rook up, attacking the pawn, and it's very difficult for Anand to defend it.
The pawn under attack, as a matter of fact, it was too advanced with that very strong bishop of Kasparov's versus the weak knight of Anand's. It didn't look as if white had any real advantage.
No, none at all. And that pawn, that advanced pawn on e5, could also even turn out to be weak.
And Anand bringing his rook up to a4, with Kasparov now able to just take the pawn off on b6, wondering what he was going to do in this position.
Well, I think Anand has played correctly there. Instead of trying to hold on to that pawn, which would really be in vain, he's improving the position of his pieces. I really like that rook move.
Great rook move, getting ready to swing the rook over to the center of the board. Anand looking very calm. This rook able to just dart to the d4 square and get a lot of control along the d file.
That's right. I think this really prevents, there we go, Kasparov taking the pawn. But this rook maneuver, once the rook comes over into the center, it controls that crucial line in the middle of the board. Now, although Kasparov has a slight advantage of the bishop against the knight, it's not really going to be enough. The rook stands so well in the center of the board.
And the players agreed to a draw for the 7th draw in a row and sitting chatting like old friends.
There's certainly none of the animosity that we've seen in previous World Championship matches. Seem to be getting on well.
Well, the score was tied at 3.5, 3.5, and Kasparov seemed content with the final result of the game.
Black probably slightly better, but you know, he takes the D line, and basically it's not much I can do. You know, I looked at the position. I didn't see any plan to improve it, and you know, just I was quite pleased. You know, just to equalize easily.
And afterwards, an upbeat Kasparov was even discussing previous games.
It's very unusual for players at this level to be so open with their analysis.
There we see the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts on New York's Upper West Side. And back downtown to the World Trade Center, where a magnificent crowd gathered for Game 8.
Well, they were really expecting a great battle today, and we were all hungry for a winner.
Garry Kasparov with the white pieces, Viswanathan Anand with the black pieces. And with 7 draws in a row, it seemed like this game was going to be extremely tense.
And what a crocodile smile from Kasparov. You can bet he's got something really strong prepared.
Well, he began again with Bobby Fischer's old favorite move, pawn to e4, and this really showed that he had aggressive intentions.
In the first few games with white, Kasparov played knight f3, he played pawn to d4, and only tried to get a very slight advantage. But in this game, in the previous game where he played white, he's played pawn to e4, and he showed that he really had some very interesting preparation ready.
And here he started with the Scotch game, playing the pawn to d4. He played a couple of times before, and now the position was much more wide open. His knight in a centralized position, and his pawn very aggressive in the middle of the board.
So Kasparov just exchanging knights there. This has all been seen before, and in fact, Kasparov has used this in a previous World Championship match against Karpov in 1990 and scored a really significant victory.
Well, the queen attacking down the E line, so Kasparov moving his queen to E2, and then Anand's knight leaping to D5, Kasparov attacking with the move C4.
Garry Kasparov just walking out there, going back to his dressing room, leaving Anand to stew at the board. Black's knight attacked in the center of the board, so Anand brings his bishop out. If the pawn captures the knight, the bishop comes down to take the queen.
And now, after B3, Anand played a spectacular move, This move had never been seen before. Pawn to g5, and this really stunned Kasparov. He had to sit and think for a while, and the crowd was abuzz over this move. What a magnificent idea, pawn to g5.
It's a tremendous move, and it's really shocked Kasparov. You can see him there looking very worried indeed. Now, you'd have expected Kasparov with the white pieces to come out with something rather unexpected. It's Anand with his pawn move g5, controlling the f4 square.
Bishop attacking the queen, and Anand responding quickly by blocking with the move d6.
All hell breaking loose in the center now. White capturing, attacking the queen.
And now that attack forced Anand to exchange queens on e2, and the chessboard was totally wild.
So Black's knight in the center of the board still attacked by White's pawn on c4, but Anand didn't do anything about it.
Anand with the incredible response, bishop to g7, and he gave a quick glance there at Kasparov as if to say, look at this tremendous move, and Kasparov was intrigued. Look at that face, as if to say, what's going on?
In fact, Anand was still playing these moves very quickly indeed, so an indication he's still in his home analysis.
It's incredible, whipping out all these moves with the two players, and that bishop laser-like on that diagonal, and the rook could go nowhere at all.
But first of all, Anand had to capture the bishop on e2. Now Kasparov recapturing, and only then does he take the rook in the corner. There you go, the bishop right in the corner there, taking the rook.
So Anand had an advantage, but then Kasparov banged down the move, rook to c1, and he seemed quite pleased with himself, getting up, leaving the board, and leaving Anand to analyze this new situation.
If we just recap the material balance, Kasparov has a rook and a knight. Anand has two rooks, so Anand should have a material advantage.
And then Anand played an absolutely spectacular move, castling right into the fire of White's pieces.
Now the rook crashing through, attacking the pawn in front of Anand's king.
And now Anand moving with his rook to check Kasparov's king, and the king had to sidestep up to d3.
So now the rook coming forward just to defend that pawn in front of the king.
And Anand feeling a bit more comfortable in the situation. He had protected himself sufficiently, and Kasparov a bit concerned because now it seemed as if the tide was shifting a bit in Anand's favor.
Somehow Kasparov had to find a way to bring his knight into the attack.
And trying to support that rook was that knight thinking about hopping into b5, so Anand ripped it off the board, removing the important piece, and now Kasparov capturing with his king.
So we had an exchange for bishop and knight, which leaves the situation two rooks against a rook and a bishop. Rook coming forward, attacking the pawn.
And the king defending the pawn, and Kasparov now eagerly looking at the board, trying to figure out if he had finally saved himself down in position and in material, but maybe he could balance the situation. And right here, Danny, Anand went into a long think over this next move.
Well, he couldn't quite see a way forward. He just checked the king backwards, but this wasn't really making progress. Normally, two rooks, better than a rook and a bishop, but here, White's pawn's so active in the center, but Anand's just looking to attack that pawn on d5. There you go. So they've repeated the position. He can't actually make progress.
And that's one way that chess players offer a draw. By making the same moves over, they agree that neither side could do anything better.
Anand could have tried to play for a win by moving the rook down, but then the bishop would come across to defend the pawn, so he rejected the idea.
And repeating moves was Anand. Kasparov well aware of this as a draw offer, so he agreed to a draw after some pretty spectacular fireworks then.
I thought this was a brilliant game. The gloves were really off. Both players were going for the win, all out.
And so after the end of the second week of play, the score was knotted at 4-4, a record-breaking 8 consecutive draws at the beginning of a match. And Anand no longer seemed intimidated by Kasparov's legendary board presence.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how far his preparation went.
Did you feel it though that you had the advantage after the opening?
Well, certainly after I castled long, he had to find this move to draw, knight d3. But after this, he gets this bishop on c5, b4 kind of structure, and I think he's holding an exchange now.
Okay, I thought that that he could draw.
Yes.
Well, I thought there were several ways that he could draw that were simpler than what he played. he thought for about 30 minutes here. I thought he could, in this position. And what do you think about the position after rook e2? I mean, you thought that
I thought bishop c5.
maybe it was too double-edged, and or just that you wouldn't make any progress after.
Unless I really push it, with f5, a5, I really try to undermine this bishop. Then well, this is pretty much where we're going to be. Swing this guy somewhat. But yeah. And I just didn't see how I could do better. I mean, he puts the pawn on d6, or leaves it here for a while, puts the rook on f5, shuffles the paint down.
The move where you castle on the queen side, why did you not go bishop to I think it was e5?
And, he takes with the rook on c6.
It was back where we started, right?
Such a position, which is basically what I'm playing for the game.
Right.
This is the best move, I think, here. Knight a3. But it keeps the option of going here or here. So, and this is just very bad for black.
Okay, Vishy. So, end of week 2. How are you feeling about the match? Are you satisfied?
More or less. I mean, I've played some good games, and yeah, I mean, there's a kind of balance, but it's okay.
How long ago did you discover that one? I mean, that was a real shocker today, g5.
Yeah, I mean, well, we had to find something in these 3 months, and we looked at g5, but yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly complicated variation, and well, we thought it would be quite nice. Actually, we had to look at lots of different openings. So I think in general my preparation was quite good.
Did you feel you were in any kind of trouble today?
Not really, but I had to at some point I realized that castles are simply the only move. If I don't castle, I think I'm just much worse.
And what kind of impression do you get about Kasparov? Do you feel normally, you feel some kind of intimidation at the board, or well, a lot of players do. Do you feel his presence at the board, especially during this match, or do you think he's stronger or weaker than usually when you play him?
Well, I mean, already after 8 games, you just get used to this presence. I mean, most times at tournaments you have the guy once, during the entire event, and maybe that explains that feeling. But after 8 games, it just feels like my opponent.
Let's see if he can keep that frame of mind for next week. Well, for Danny King, I'm Maurice Ashley, saying so long from the World Trade Center in New York City.